Hello, everybody. So, this is part three of our story, and it begins with me sitting on the edge of the bed with Dorothy, holding her up as she's trying to focus on my face. And then she said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm dying. I'm sorry that I have to leave you, John. Then suddenly, I no longer noticed the flashing lights. I no longer heard the paramedics entering our room. Everything froze. I said, no, no, Dorothy, you're going to be all right. There is nothing for you to be sorry about. At that moment, I could hear the paramedics trying to ask me questions. And slowly, reality brought me back to the room. They told her, we need to take you to the hospital. And she said, no, no, John, you take me. I told her, no, Dorothy, you have to go with them. Annie and I will be right behind, and we will meet you there. They placed her into the ambulance, and Annie and I followed in silence, trying to process what had just happened. We arrived at the hospital, a place I knew well because I worked there. I worked in the laboratory there. Then I heard a familiar voice. I turned and saw a familiar face. It's Dr. Scribbick. Our eyes met for a moment, and then she immediately took control of the situation. Orders were given. Nurses responded. An EKG was performed. It showed nothing. A CT scan was ordered, looking for the possibility of a stroke. We waited and waited and waited. Then finally they brought her back into the room. My eyes went over to Dr. Scribbick, looking for answers. Annie and I were joined by my daughter Alyssa by this time. When Dorothy was placed back in her bed, she opened her eyes and she said, what's happening? What's happening? What's going on? Then suddenly she fell back into the bed, unresponsive. Code blue was called. My daughters broke down and held on to me. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. One of the nurses began chest compressions as the doctor directed the team. Then someone said, we've got a pulse. But that only lasted for a moment, and then her heart stopped again. Again, code blue to the ER. We were pulled out from the room, and we were standing in a hallway holding on to each other and trying to understand what was happening. A nurse comes out of the room and said, quickly, the doctor wants to talk to you. As I walked back to the room, fear took over. I thought I was about to hear the worst. She was alive. They had brought her back again. The doctor said, "Stand by me. I want you to know and see everything that we're trying to do to save your wife." They were going to have to intubate her now, and I watched as they performed that procedure. It was a difficult thing to see. Then it happens again. Her heart has stopped. Now there is a nurse actually on my wife performing compressions. They're trying desperately to bring her back yet again. They're successful. She has a heartbeat. She's got a pulse now. Another doctor enters the room. The ER doctor says, "She's having a heart attack." He says, "Yes, yes, let's get to the cath lab now." He looks at me and says, "You're the husband, follow me. We will talk in the hallway, and I will explain to you everything that is going to happen and everything we're going to do." As we rushed down this familiar hallway that I had walked many times before, it now seemed like we would never reach the end. We were placed in a small room that was adjacent to the cath lab. We are now joined by family, friends, and we begin waiting. We're praying, comforting each other. And then, over the intercom, we hear that familiar phrase again. Code blue, code blue, code blue to the cath lab. I began to cry. I felt numb. My daughters, my friends, our family members, all of us in shock, all of us crying. In part 4, things are about to get surreal. Please join us again for that. Thank you.